Welcome to the Mac for the Blind Spring 2023 online course number 5. And this one is all about I jokingly say to my clients, the lesser loved apps, some of the apps that don't get the primary sort of attention as like phone and mail and messages and contacts, calendars, reminders. But yet these are still, apps that are kind of important in a variety of different ways. Sometimes people are not even aware that the app exists, or they see it on their home screen, but they don't really explore it and kind of understand the full capacity or ability of the application. So I'm going to go through some of the apps that I will typically go over with clients, private clients or state clients I work with. Plus, I'm going to talk about a few other apps and then open kind of things up for questions. And I don't, let me just say up front, I don't want this to turn into I've done it in the past where I deliberately ask people to come with app recommendations and talk about their favorite apps and all that stuff. I want to keep this very simple. So I'm going to kind of mention a couple of my favorite apps and then sort of open the floor up to questions. And then anybody who's got additional comments or pieces of information they want to suggest in regards to those apps.
06 p.m.
Clock.
Double tap to open.
Clock app. Everybody thinks, sometimes I've had clients that just think it's a place to set the time for the phone, which of course is wrong, because you would do that in settings and theoretically the phone sets its time based on your location. So when we double tap on the clock application,
clock 7:40 a.m. alarm
so
off.
we discover
Tab bar timer tab 404
that there are 4 tabs at the bottom of the screen. So this is a very similar layout to, if those of you who explore and know the phone app, you have the 5 tabs at the bottom of the screen. The clock app has 4, plus it will have I believe a 5th if you turn on bedtime in the health app, which we'll talk about a little bit later on here. But the 4 tabs are
stopwatch selected, world clock tab 1 of 4.
World clock
selected, alarm tab 2 of 4. Stopwatch tab 3 of 4. Timer tab 4 of 4.
Timer. So I'm just flicking to the right at the bottom of the screen, and VoiceOver is announcing the tabs. So I'm going to start with the alarm, the 2nd tab. So basically, most people use the alarm very simple, straightforward. They will ask Siri to set an alarm. Set an alarm for 6 a.m., wake me up at 6:30 a.m., things like that. You can, though, do alarms manually if you need to do so. You'll hear that I have a bunch of alarms that I've ended up setting for different reasons over the years.
Button. Alarm heading. Add button. Sleep vertical line wake up. No alarm. Setup button. Other heading 4:30 a.m. alarm off.
So when you have an active alarm, it will end up being at the top of the list. I don't have any active alarms. I just have other alarms that I have.
4:45 a.m. 5 a.m. alarm. 5:10 a.m. alarm off.
These are
double tap to toggle setting. Actions available.
The status is being off. Now I can delete these alarms using the action menu.
Delete. Performed action. Delete. 5:15 a.m.
So
delete. Performed action, delete, 5.
So if you need to get rid of an alarm, you don't necessarily have to go up to that edit button and get into the edit mode. It's not necessary. Our good old friend from the rotor, the action menu, will allow you to do that on any given alarm.
Edit, delete.
So you also can
activate, default,
activate or edit an alarm. So if for any reason you wanted to make any changes to an alarm, you could do that as well. So sometimes people will have fixed alarms, like if they work 5 days a week and they get up every day at 6 a.m., you can even name an alarm as your work wake up alarm or something like that if you do the process manually. So there is an add button at the top of the screen.
Edit button, alarm
just
heading.
Flick to the right.
Add button.
There's your add button. And if you double tap on that, you can then pick your time, the hour, the minutes, You can also select the snooze if you want to have the snooze ability turned on or turned off. Some people like to have that snooze thing where, the alarm goes off. They hit the snooze button. It gives them another 5 minutes to sleep, and then it goes off again. And I think it will let you do that up to 4 times before the alarm just won't stop going off until you manually, disable it. You also have the ability to change the wake up sound. So I believe by default it plays something called beacon. I've switched mine to the bell tower because the bell tower alarm ringtone can basically wake up the dead, which is sometimes what I need in the morning. So when you make the switch, by the way, for the alarm or the snooze setting, it is, as far as I'm aware, it is across all your alarms. So in other words, you can't have, as far as I'm aware, unless it's changed, and I stand corrected if that's the case, but you can't have a different alarm sound for different alarms, to my knowledge. I've not messed with it in quite some time, so maybe Apple has changed that over the years, but it's never been the case as far as I can remember. So that's how, you basically can deal with your alarms. Now, I don't think Siri will delete an alarm. She'll turn off or turn on an alarm for you, but I do not believe she actually will get rid of the alarm entirely. You have to come in here and do that yourself. As I said, you can double tap on the edit button at the top of the screen, or you can simply use your action menu from the rotor and just double tap on delete if you want to get rid of an alarm.
Tab bar, timer, tab,
I'm going to go
4,
back to the
stopwatch,
bottom
selected,
here.
world clock, tab, 1 of 4.
So I'm just going to do the world clock, which is the first tab.
Timer, tab, 4 of 4, edit, button, add, button, world clock, heading.
So it's the same sort of setup. You have the edit and the add buttons at the top of the screen. Now, the add means that you can just add different cities to your world clock.
Cupertino, today, -3 hours. New York, today, +0 hours. 1, tab bar, selected.
So I only have 2 cities on my world clock. I cleaned it out recently, actually. I used to have a lot of cities because what I will do often is when I work with clients overseas, I had an influx of people from the UK and Europe, Belgium, France. So I had world clock cities set up here so that I could sort of remind myself how far ahead they would be, of my time zone if I needed to try to text them, or if I was expecting an email back from what time of the day was it when I sent the email in their neck of the woods. So, if you have family and friends who live in different parts of the country or different parts of the world, you can add them to this world cities so that you could, verify if you decide you get the notion or the idea, oh, I want to call Uncle Jim, but Uncle Jim is in Hawaii and is, from me, 6 hours behind me. Probably not a good idea to be calling him at this time because it would be just after 6 in the morning in the land of Aloha. So, again, it was my friend working with a lot of people. I've had Australian, I've had somebody from Singapore, Japan, New Zealand. So the world clock can sometimes be a really good friend to me in those instances.
Timer, tab, stopwatch, tab, 3 of 4.
Stopwatch. Obviously, if you need to use a stopwatch for any reason, you're keeping track of time for a task or something like that. One of the things many years ago when my twin nephews were living here on the island and we used to watch them here at the house, they used to have those little ride-on cars. And in the summertime, we have a big patio in the backyard, and they used to race around each other. So if I was sitting out there, I would sometimes pretend to do the stopwatch with them because they always wanted to know who was faster. And of course, you don't make one faster than the other if you don't want issues. So I used to always give them the same clock, 7 seconds or 8 seconds, whatever, just to keep the peace. But that's the only time I've used the stopwatch in any capacity, was messing around. The timer.
Timer, tab, 4 of 4.
Very useful. I use this for working out. I've used this in the past for, keeping track of stuff that's, cooking or whatever. on the George Foreman grill, etc. You know, again, this is one of those things where it's very easy simply to say to Siri, you know, set a timer for 10 minutes, set a timer for 15 minutes, and then you're off and running. But if, you know, you can do it manually just by double tapping.
0 hours, picker item, 0 hours, picker item,
So you
adjustable,
have
1 of
0
24,
hours.
15 minutes, picker item,
So
adjustable,
right
6,
now it's set to 15.
0 seconds, picker
And
item,
then
cancel,
seconds.
dimmed, start, button.
And then the start button when you want to, you know, actually get the timer. So if you feel like doing it the old school way and going in here and setting the timer yourself, be my guest. I have to confess, as much as I preach to my clients about not necessarily using Siri for everything, I do tend to use Siri for timers and alarms myself at this point. So those are the four main categories or top areas, whatever you want to call it, in the clock application. Definitely worth, you know, using this app, and know, you know, it's not the place where you set the physical time for your iPhone.
Weather.
There we
Double.
go. So I'm going to double tap
Weather.
on weather.
Output 70.
Now, let me just start off by saying this. There was a time many moons ago when the weather app on the iPhone was trash, as my nephews will use the term. It wasn't really worth much. And I could understand fully why everybody had this desire for a better application to do weather, the Weather Channel app, et cetera, et cetera. And I was guilty, of course, as well, because the weather app was really not much to speak of. But I have to really say that over the years, Apple has slowly, and maybe secretly, I don't know how much they really talk about it in public, changed the app and really made it a very robust and complete weather application. I still, you know, there's still people that want to use Weather Channel, Weather Gods, Weather Radar, Radio, whatever it's called, Wonderground, etc., and that's fine. I still have the NOAA weather app because it does integrate with the weather app of the phone itself. But basically, at this point, I think that the weather app on the phone, because it even now does storm warnings and stuff, you can set up in settings. So for a while, to me, that was the only thing the weather app was missing, was that ability to warn you if you have a thunderstorm, a lightning storm, or, you know, snow or ice or whatever approaching your area. But now you can have the weather app do that. So the cool things about the weather app is that it gives you your current conditions.
Output 70 degrees, partly cloudy, high 73 degrees, low 56 degrees.
So, you know, it gives you basically a summary of what's expected for, you know, that to the given day.
Air quality alert.
So we have an air quality alert because it's very, very humid.
Air quality alerts until air quality 1 hourly for 2 p.m. partly cloudy.
Plus you have your 24 hours, the next 24 hour, you know, basically rundown. So as I flick to the right,
3 p.m. 4 p.m. partly cloudy. 5 p.m. mostly cloudy. 70.
And Cliff, I do not know why the announcements for people entering and leaving are being spoken, because I have it turned off in accessibility settings in case you're curious. I'm just going to quickly
6
flick
p.m.
here.
7, 8, 8, 9, 10,
the
11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 m. Mostly clear. Air quality 10-day forecast. Today, mostly clear.
And then we have the 10-day forecast as you keep flicking to the right.
Wednesday, mostly clear, high of 73, low of 54. Thursday, mostly clear, high of 71, low of 54. Friday, drizzle, 40% chance of rain, high of 69, low of 55.
So it looks like we here in June are not even going to really get out of the 60s and low 70s. Lovely. It was actually warmer up in Buffalo when I was up there. It was almost 90 degrees 3 days in a row. So very strange that the weather is actually warmer up by my brother than it is down here. So you also will have eventually
Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, UV index, sunset, 8:21 p.m. UV index, 6, high, use sun protection until 5 p.m. Minimum sunset, 8:21 p.m. Winds from the west-northwest at 10 miles per hour. Precipitation, 0 inches, in last 24 hours. Next, feels like 70 degrees. Similar. So
you have all these different conditions and options as you keep flicking to the right. So, and if there's any kind of weather, National Weather Service bulletins or any pieces of information, a flood watch, snow or whatever, you're also going to find that listed. Now, the other thing about this is if as long as you didn't turn off GPS and stuff and location services for the weather app or app refresh, if you get on a plane and you land in Orlando or you go out to Phoenix or whatever, when you get off the plane and you open your weather app, it should adjust to your local area and then give you the forecast for that area and keep it there while you're actually still in that location. At least that has been the case for me when I have traveled. It's really neat that I don't have to go and find the city and set the weather. But with that being said,
toolbar, location list button.
So
double tap to view your location list.
I'm at the bottom of the screen now. I used the 4-finger single tap at the very bottom of my screen, and I have a location list. So I'm going to double tap.
More button, pop-up button. More weather heading. Search for a city or airport. Dictate button. Search for a city or.
So you can search for a city. You can add this to your world cities. And again, just like with the world clock, this will keep track of basically whatever city you select and give you the conditions.
Dictate button. Location list. My location. Altitude 70 degrees. Air quality Cupertino 10:20 a.m. 63 degrees. Expect rain in the next hour. High 72. New York 1:20 p.m. 77 degrees. Air quality alert. High 79 degrees.
There is a difference between New York City being warmer than it is out here because of all the buildings, etc.
Honolulu 7:21 a.m. 73 degrees. Partly cloudy. High 80. Kahului 7:21 a.m. Killarney 6:21 p.m. 69 degrees. Mostly.
So I've just picked some random cities that I've added over time. Some of these places I've been to. I have not been to Killarney. There's a couple of other cities that I've not been to. I just kind of threw it in there as I was working with people over the years, just so I could tease them if their weather was not as pleasant as mine, or be prepared to be teased if my weather was not as pleasant as theirs. So I collected cities, I guess, over the years, but you can add cities, you can delete cities. So again, you can have fun with the world cities if you really wanted to be, I have known people who are, I really call them weather geeks, and that they probably should have went to school as meteorologists. And I know a guy who is better, and I'm not saying this as an exaggeration or anything. I know a guy who is better at looking at weather radar and stuff like that, and basically telling you if it's truly going to rain, if it's truly going to snow, and he calls
Killarney,
it better
6:22
than the weather people do themselves. So I always tell this guy that he should have went to school and should have become a weatherman, because he does a better job, and he's a computer geek, by the way. So that's the weather application. In settings under weather, you can, change to centigrade. You can do all kinds of things if you want to customize. And I believe that's where you could turn on the storm warnings and things like that. And change the way your conditions and stuff are displayed. So again, I know there is a propensity for people to want to use weather gods or Wonderground or whatever the case may be, and I'm not at all trying to dissuade people from using other apps if they feel more inclined to do so. It's just that, my point here is that the weather app is not like it used to be years ago when it really was trash. So we'll close out of this.
Weather. Double tap to open. Maps. Notes. Reminders. iTunes Store. App Store. Contacts. Watch. Health.
Health.
Double tap to open.
Let's open up health here.
Health. You can help develop and improve health and activity. Improve health. You can help develop and learn more. Button. Examples of data and usage. Heart-related measurements such as ECG app usage and results, which can help improve algorithms.
This is like the splash.
Cycle tracking data such as falls detected, which can improve. Headphone audio and environment activity-related measurements such as activity rings. Trend. Don't share my data. Button. Share my data with Apple. But share my data.
All right, let's get rid of this.
Improve safety features. Heading. Improve safety features. Don't share my data. Share my data with Apple. But share my data.
Yeah. I guess
Summary.
they
Heading.
must have had a new update with all this information. But basically,
Tab bar. Browse. Tab. 3 of 3.
so at the bottom of the screen, I just jumped down with the 4-finger single tap. You have the
Sharing.
browse,
Tab. 2
sharing,
of selected. Summary. Tab.
and the
1 of 3.
summary. I think the browse will give you apps that you could download that kind of integrate with the health application. Now, I'm not going to go crazy
US
here.
has new dialog. Zoom.us has new system.
I'm not going to go crazy here talking about every aspect of the health app. I'm going to kind of give this as a summary.
Audio sub mute but more.
So let me jump up here to the top.
Summary heading.
So I have the summary
Profile
here at the top.
button. Noise notifications. May 29th. Close. Sound levels hit 90 decibels.
Yeah, that was at a baseball game.
Around 30 minutes at this level can cause highlight diagram, image, health checklist. Close button. Make sure the health features review button. Favorites heading.
Okay, so
Edit button. Steps 1:08 p.m. 3000.
So the things that I keep track of, for example, and you can customize this through favorites, is steps.
Show all health data button. Trends heading. Show all health trends. Get more from health heading.
And every time I go into this app, they
Close
change
button.
and they get rid of my...
Update your medical ID in an emergency. Get started. Close button. AFib history. If you have atrial fibrillation,
They've totally, I guess they must have updated this app recently with maybe the 16.5 or whatever, because all this stuff was not here. And of course, it's destroying my demonstration because I just simply wanted to show you the favorites that I have. So I'll just talk about it. So steps, I keep track of active calories burned, resting calories, my heart rate. So you can add all these things to favorites and they'll display your current favorite, the current state at this particular time of day, but it also will show you trends. I don't particularly, they really changed this app. It used to be much easier, in my opinion, to keep track of, let's say if I wanted to check my steps from last week, compare them to how, let's say, walking around when I was up in Buffalo and sightseeing with my brother and my sister-in-law and the family, how many steps that I walk on Thursday of last week compared to what I've done today so far. It was very easy to kind of look at that stuff. They've kind of complicated it a little bit. It's still possible, but you kind of have to, look around a lot more. They've added a great deal to the
Patrick Andrade joined this channel.
application itself, especially if you integrate with other apps or you have like the Apple Watch. I mean, to me, one of the real impressive things about the Apple Watch is that the way that the health app integrates and shows you your data. So if you have diabetes or you even Parkinson's, you have heart conditions, there's various apps that you can have on your watch and that will show you your health data and warn you if you're having any issues. So there, for example, there's an EKG app on the watch. If you have AFib like I have, if you think you're having an AFib episode, you can actually do the EKG app on the watch and it will show you. And then on the phone, the health app will kind of warn you if you've had any detected incidents, just like it's had before with the noise.
Chris Trumbull joined this channel.
I didn't even know that noise detection thing was actually set. I didn't know I turned it on, but obviously if you listened, I was in a couple of situations, very loud places where the decibels went over 90, and I guess that's considered to be dangerous levels if you're exposed to it for more than a half hour. So if you have a Bluetooth elliptical machine, a bike, an exercise bike, a treadmill, all of these different devices through apps. For example, MyCloud Fitness is one that I have used. There's another one, which of course I can't think of what it's called, that will integrate and are accessible, from the perspective of a VoiceOver user. So you can keep track of how many calories you burn and stuff like that, through the health app. And I'm trying to think what the heck is the app that I use with my elliptical machine. And it's, of course, driving me nuts here. But I have an app that will keep track of my elliptical machine, and it shows up in the health data here as far as the calories and steps and everything else that I've done on the machine. And there are a lot of different apps right now out there that will do that for different devices that you use. And there's health data that you can set up for the health app, as far as if you do have any particular medical condition that somebody should be aware of. If you, God forbid, have an emergency and there's a paramedic on the scene, your health data can actually help them and maybe even save your own life. So it's not an app that, sometimes people just kind of, it's nobody else's business.
Mary Ward joined this channel.
That's the one line that I hear a lot with some of this stuff on the iPhone and the watch. It's like, well, it's my personal information. I don't want to share it with anybody. And I get it. And I'm not criticizing anybody, but if you do have a health condition, it might be a good idea to make that stuff known and available on your phone. God forbid there is a situation where it might be very useful to a paramedic or a doctor. So definitely take a look at the health app, spend some time going in there and just poking around. And the browsing part is very interesting, because I just had no clue the number of different applications for different conditions and such that are out there that you can add and integrate. Now, remember, your health data is also encrypted. So it's not something that somebody can hack and such. And the only thing, though, is if you, you reset your phone, I don't believe it actually keeps your health data. I think you kind of go back to square one, if I remember correctly. I've been in situations where clients have been very nasty, for the lack of a better way of describing it, when I bring up the TV app. What do you think? You're funny? I'm blind. Blah, 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 blah. As if blind people don't watch TV or can't watch
Cliff
or
joined
listen,
this channel.
listen to TV. I'm not a big TV person per se. I don't watch like ABC, NBC, CBS kinds of stuff. I'm not into sitcoms or, the drama shows or anything like that. I tend to be more or less a sports guy, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, whatever is on, I'll have it on. But I do like my specialty channels, like the History Channel, Discovery. I'm big into history types of shows. I love the paranormal. So I use the TV app. It's what it does is it integrates basically everything that you have, Netflix, whatever. If you have Peacock, Warner Brothers, whatever the case may be, Hulu, you can search for shows, and then it will show you if those shows are available. And then if you have apps that you can watch them on, and you can then use your phone or your iPad to actually listen to those shows.
Watch now.
So, the watch now.
Add to up next button.
Let me just see.
Watch now. Add to account set. Apple WW. Night special interest to watch the WWDC 20 page 1 of 23 adjustable.
So they have the WWDC keynote, obviously, that happened yesterday with the new announcements of the new Mac and iOS 17, iPad OS.
iPad
17.
joined this channel.
So if you want to catch that, that's I guess being being I guess the front most thing that they're kind of pushing right now. But I'm just going to keep flicking, because this is the stuff that I keep track of.
Up next, heading History's Greatest Mysteries. Next S4 E17 History button.
So History's
Actions
Greatest
available
Mystery.
and illustrate Aussie Gold Hunters. The Curse of Oak Island. Continue S Ted Lasso. Continue S3.
So all of these things, if I double tap on
Cliff
them,
joined this channel.
will open the appropriate application and play the show or the movie. I can also search for movies. So it's not just TV shows. Now, I'm just going to warn you, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. There are instances where it's not always free. So be very careful when you're following up, and let's say you're searching for a show. Sometimes it will tell you that you can get it, like, let's say for $2.99 in the iTunes store or something like that. Or you might need a subscription for a specific application. Maybe you're using it free for a month or whatever, and you totally forgot about it. It's still considered to be an active app on your phone, but you may not have a subscription. So you may have to actually get a subscription to Hulu or whatever in order to watch a particular movie or a particular show. The other sort of facet of this to keep in mind too is go into settings under accessibility and turn on the area that says play audio description whenever it's available. You will find that certain shows and movies do have audio description. The iTunes store, for example, has a complete category. If you do a search for AD or audio description, you'll find an active list of all of the movies that are available that contain all of those, that contain audio description. Netflix, a lot of them, especially the Netflix original series and such, a lot of them have the audio description. But I was very amazed and impressed to find that watching some of the shows that I do on Discovery Go and the History Channel have actually had audio description added to them. And I'm not talking about like past shows from 2 seasons ago. I'm talking about current shows. So I was really pretty impressed by finding that some of them do have the audio description. Now, what will happen is when you double tap on a show, it will open the app that it's related to. For example, if I was to double tap on History's Greatest Mysteries, it would open up the History Channel app that I have. So you also will have to download an app that's associated with that program, as long as you have an ability to watch it. So for example, I have Verizon Fios. So History Channel is part of my Fios package. So my TV provider, which you have to enter, is Fios, Verizon Fios. But if you have Comcast or DirecTV or whatever it is, you just fill in the appropriate information. And as long as you have access to that particular channel through your subscription, you should be able to watch, whatever. And also, if you pay for a subscription for Netflix or Hulu or Fubar or whatever, Pluto TV, you should be able to watch that stuff through the TV app. Now, if you're a Mac user as well as an iPhone, iPad user, you now have the ability to sync your favorites, your what's next things on all your devices. So you can go over to your Mac. So if I wanted to listen to the next episode of History's Greatest Mysteries, I could go over to my Mac if I didn't feel like, sitting with it on my phone or my iPad. So it's definitely more than just what the surface might lead you to believe as quote unquote the TV app. So I just wanted to spend some time explaining that, because it's an app that I would have never thought that I would get as much use out of it as I definitely have over the last few years.
Messages for unread.
So let's do open podcasts.
Here's Apple Podcasts.
Now, I will admit that I used to be a much more of a podcast junkie years ago. I used to follow at least 8, 10, maybe a dozen different podcasts, mostly sports stuff, because I used to do a regular radio sports talk show here locally with a friend of mine. But over the years, as my time has become limited and I've become more busy, I mainly, when I work out in the mornings, I usually use the TV app and listen to the shows. I'm not as much of a podcast guy as I used to be by any stretch. But I will tell you that the podcast app, Apple rewrote it a few years ago. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm not going to comment either way. I don't use it enough that I can, really tell you if Downcast or Overcast or one of the other third-party podcasts apps is a better
Mini player, album artwork.
for you. That's up for you to, to decide. I can only tell you that the podcast app integrates well with Siri. You can ask Siri to play specific episodes. You can search your podcast.
Tab bar, search, tab,
So-
4.
You have the 4 tabs at the bottom. Again, I did the 4-finger single tap to get to the bottom.
Library, tab, 3, browse, tab, 2, selected, listen now, tab, 1
So
of 4.
Listen Now is going to show you the stuff that you have subscribed to and what the latest episodes. This should be a joke
Listen now,
for me.
heading, account settings, up next, heading, see all, button, The Way I Heard It with Mike Rowe, Give the Children Knives and Fire, Mac OS 10, Vision Pro, New Max, and N2 Ultra at WWTC. Eyes on Isles podcast on the NY Islanders. Eyes on Isles podcast.
So these are the ones that I was subscribed to that I haven't listened to in a dog's age. But if you were an active podcast listener, the Listen Now screen would give you access to all the latest podcasts episodes, and you can pick and choose which ones you would like to play. Again, at the bottom, you can search. So if somebody turns you on to a specific podcast and you want to search for it, you can do that. And then you can choose to just play an episode, or you can subscribe. Now, keep in mind, again, I would be remiss if I don't say this, and I want to be clear, not all podcasts are free these days. There are some that will ask you to pay a subscription monthly or whatever. So if you're searching for a specific podcast and you find something of interest, most of them you just subscribe for free and you're good to go. But keep in mind that there are occasionally ones, at least I've been told,
Vincent joined this channel.
is that you have to pay, to subscribe to the podcast. The other thing to keep in mind is if you're downloading podcast episodes and you don't come in here and delete them, they will take up space on your device. So if you only have a 64 or a 32 gigabyte iPhone and you're a podcast junkie, just be very careful, because you could find yourselves running out of space when you go to do an iCloud backup and it tells you you don't have enough physical space on your phone to do the backup. And you're sitting there scratching your head going, how in the world can that happen? Well, look at your podcasts and just see how many of them you have downloaded and have stored. So, you want to make sure that you do come in here and delete if you happen to be a very heavy podcast listener. So, you can find all kinds of stuff: sports, politics, humor, comedy, drama, crime, mystery things. There's all kinds of different categories and types of podcasts, and, people who have podcasts. And I think every DJ, if you have satellite radio these days and you listen to a specific channel, the 80s, the 90s, the classics, whatever, Turbo, whatever, a lot of those DJs have their own podcasts as well. So just different things to keep in mind if you happen to be a podcast person. I wish I had more time to go back. I wouldn't want to be married to the app, but it would be nice to just be able to listen to a podcast here and there. I just don't have time these days, which I guess is a good thing from the perspective of being busy, but it does make Johnny a pretty dull guy. So we'll close this out here.
Messages, 5 unread messages.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk the Home app. The Home application is awesome if you are into home automation. In this day and age, with all of the different devices that are out, such as Google Home and, all of the Amazon products, the Echo products, you have the HomePod, you have Siri. So there's a lot of ways you can go about automating your house. And depending on how, much you get into this. So for me, the only accessories at this very moment that I have in my Home app is my HomePod that's in my bedroom, and my Lyric thermostat that I use for the air condition in the summertime that was put in a couple of years ago. But you could have smart lighting. You can get these smart plugs through like Home Depot or Office Max, Staples, whatever you have in your Costco. You can buy these smart plugs that you can make a fan or a light or a TV set or whatever, all become part of your network, and you can control everything with the Home app, either directly through devices, or you can automate things with, like, let's say, for example, I have a friend, I call him George Jetson because it's like his house is like the Jetsons cartoon. He has a place that he had built up in New Hampshire. Everything is Siri enabled in his house virtually, even the shades being raised and lowered. So he has these scripts where he'll just say, "Good morning, Siri," or "Good evening, Siri," and a bunch of different things will happen. The sensor lights outside get activated. The garage is made sure that the garage is locked at night. Certain lights go on, certain lights go off. If he says good morning, I believe at this point, the last time I spoke to him, his coffee maker actually goes on. And he has a shower
Screen dimmed.
that is Siri enabled as well for him and his wife that have different jets and temperatures. So he can say a specific command to Siri and his shower gets started with exactly the way he likes it, or if his wife Ann does, exactly the way she likes it. So home app is definitely one that you can have a lot of fun with. I know my brother Chris up in Buffalo has a lot of stuff done through the A lady, the Amazon lady, that he uses different commands. He's got cameras, outside cameras and stuff, and lights. He can turn lights on and off in the house, and it's just really neat. It just makes, I guess some people will say it's making us a lazy society, whatever. That's fine, whatever the case may be. That's your opinion. But the home app is definitely something that like for example, my girlfriend will her air condition in the summertime when she works during the day. If it's really hot and she's coming home, she can get the air condition running in her house, an hour before she gets home. So by the time she gets home, her house is nice and cool instead of just letting the air condition run all day and run up her electric bill. So stuff like that can be very handy through the home app. Okay, so
8 p.m. One notification.
let's
Weather.
see.
Partly Tuesday 6.
Let's see. I think those are
Messages.
the main
5.
ones.
Calendar. 2 o'clock. 1:48 p.m.
Those are the
Double
main
tap to
ones
open.
I think I wanted to go over, but there are other apps like the calculator app, the measure app, the stocks application. You want to explore. What I try to really encourage my clients is don't necessarily get caught up in like the main apps or even like the exciting third-party apps that you might end up downloading. And I'm going to talk just about a couple of them in a moment here. But there are a bunch of other apps that Apple has added. Like I said, the TV, home, health apps are really good. You have Voice
1:49
Memos.
p.m.
Voice Memos
Photos.
is a great recording app that you can use in a lot of different instances, including students who are in school and they want to record parts of a lecture. I used to use the Voice Memos app years ago when I had press access with the radio show, and I would listen to our local hockey team's coaches' press conference after games. And I record the press conference for notes that I would do later for the blog. So I would sit there and just, have the Voice Memos app record his press conferences. I'd done this in a way that sighted people, when you go on vacation, they love, sighted people love to take their photos and their videos of things. I will actually put Voice Memos on and record specific situations that I'm in. If I'm on a beach, or, there's certain locations that I've been to that I know by sound. I know that might sound strange to some people, but you could drug me and bring me there and wake me up and give me 5 minutes of just sitting there, and just the sounds could tell me exactly where I am. So I will use the Voice Memos app to record, moments just in the same way a sighted person might take video of that setting. So, you can use the Voice Memos app in a lot of different ways. It also syncs between iDevices and your Mac. So you have access to your voice recordings on all of your devices if you need to. You also can label them and give them specific names, to kind of, because usually the title of the Voice Memo app is usually based on the location of where it was recorded and the date, combination of both. But I like to kind of title my voice memos with specific information so that I know where they came from. Now, as far as some of, again, I didn't want to turn this into a third-party app extravaganza, because that's
Screen
a
dimmed.
rabbit hole that, you definitely can go down and get lost in. So, my point that I just want to make to folks is remember that the iPhone and the iPad are really a platform. And one of the things that I really don't think Apple even foresaw years ago when they came up with these devices was how it was going to impact those of us with visual impairments and for other impairments for that matter, other physical impairments. The proliferation and explosion of the various types of apps that offer us a great deal of independence and self-reliance and have really broken the traditional blindness mode. I've been in this industry since 1992. I sold products under Technologies for the visually impaired for approximately 17 years. I can tell you that no matter what people want to claim, Apple destroyed the traditional blindness market by way of VoiceOver on the Mac and the iPhone and iPad and its accessibility. You need look no further than apps like Seeing AI that have a money identifier, product scanner, color identifier, document scanner for free. Now, keep in mind that when I was selling products, I was selling reading machines for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 back in the day. Color identifiers were about $800 or $900. Forget it. Quest, I think they still sell the Quest scanner for products, the UPC codes, and I think that's a $1,200 or $1,100 ticket item. GPS devices. Some are still being sold, I believe, like the Stellar Trekker and the Trekker. There's another version now that you can buy. Again, still though, a couple of $100 a pop. You can get GPS for free in the Maps app or Google Maps app or, a few of the other different apps, or maybe for very small prices. So my point here is that, the old expression, you used to hear people always saying, there's an app for that. Well, I think at this stage in 2023, as a blind person, we're getting to the point where there is an app for that. And especially now with LiDAR and, indoor GPS and object detection, machine learning, artificial intelligence, whatever you want to throw into the gamut, is giving us so much potential with our phones in particular. Being able to go out on our own independently or live in our apartments or our houses and take care of those apartments and houses by way of third-party apps and integrate that with the different types of health applications. If you happen to have, secondary health conditions beyond just blindness, that you can maintain your life, your lifestyle, and your health by way of these apps and keep track of your blood sugar levels and your heart rate and things like that, all by way of these wonderful third-party apps that are out there. And many of them are either free or very low cost to the user. That just really opens up the world for us in so many ways. And you got to give credit to developers for, continuing to give us this type of access. And yes, let's be realistic here. A lot of these guys, they do it from, maybe the kindness of their hearts, but everybody's in business in some way, shape, or form. But nevertheless, when you compare what you pay for some of these apps and what they give you compared to, as I said earlier, 10, 20, 25 years ago, when you had most blind people could only afford these devices and products by way of their state commission for the blind, services for the blind, or through the federal government. Now you can just go to the app store on your phone and you can either buy it on your credit card for $1 or $2 or $4 or whatever, or free. So, you give companies like, as much as I may be hard on Microsoft for other things, the Seeing AI application, as I mentioned earlier, to me is still one of the really premier apps out there. I know there is some competitive ones now. What is it, SuperSense and such? And again, more power to the developers out there. The more apps that we have access to, that gives us the ability and the options to, as I like to call it, multiple tools in the toolbox. In other words, you don't have a single app that does one thing. You should always have backup apps. So, for example, you have Seeing AI, the document scanner, but you also have Prismo, you have Voice Dream Scanner and Text Grabber. So there are backup applications. You have maybe Be My Eyes, but there's still Tap and apps of that nature, the recognizer apps that you might want to still have in your back pocket, just in case, because if one doesn't do the job, then maybe another one you can pull out of the toolbox will get the job done for you. And of course, the good old App Store, that's going to be the conduit for you to actually get access to these applications. So you want to, spend some time, particularly in the search field of the App Store. I can't say enough about appleviz.com, APPLEV like in Victor, I like in Idaho, S like in Sierra.com. Those guys do a fantastic job of providing information, particularly for third-party apps for iOS and Mac that are VoiceOver compatible, and will give you sort of the skinny on, whether those apps are definitely living up to what they claim to be able to do. So definitely a resource you want to use if you have a question about an app. Oh, I wonder if this app is accessible. The best thing to do is to go on the AppleViz, do a search, and see what's being said about it. Because I guarantee you, I would say most of the time you're going to find some piece of information about that app, whether you can download it or whether you should avoid it. Because, the bottom line too is keep in mind, accessibility, unfortunately, with third-party apps is not always granted. It's certainly gotten better over the years. A lot of apps are at least reasonably accessible, but don't think it's a guarantee. If you're going to have to purchase an application, just be 100% sure that it definitely is accessible before you buy it. Free's fine. All you're wasting with free is your time. You're not wasting any money if the app turns out to be trash, but you don't want to spend money on an app to find out that you wasted that money. I mean, you can get it back. You can put a complaint in, you can get in touch with Apple support, explain to them the app is not VoiceOver accessible, and they will refund your
June
money.
6th, 1:59 p.m.
So, keep that in mind, that all is not lost if you do buy an app that it turns out not to be accessible. But, the best piece of advice for you is to try to avoid that scenario. And, one of the other last things, I didn't put this in the notes for this course, but I did want to just mention to you, when it comes to your iPhone and you start to gather applications, remember that you can do folders on your phone, and you don't have to have your apps laying all over the place on 8, 10, 11 pages worth of applications.
Read messages.
So
Double
I
tap.
have my single apps here at the top.
Calendar, clock, photos, camera, weather, maps, notes, reminders, iTunes Store, App Store, contacts, watch, health, fitness, news, home, settings, Apple Apps folder, 7 apps.
So
Double
then I
tap to
have
open.
folders.
Extras folder, 11 apps. Blindness apps folder, 8 apps. Finance folder, 10 apps. File apps folder, 9 apps. Productivity folder, 12 apps. Page 1 of 2, adjustable.
So at the bottom of my first home screen page, I have some folders, but my next screen.
Watch. Double tap dock, Safari, mail, phone, page 1 of 2, and page 2 of 2. Reading apps folder, 15 apps.
Everything is a folder on my second page.
OCR apps folder, 9. Role-play games folder, Stormate games apps folder, hockey apps folder, ringtone apps folder, utilities folder, shopping apps folder, blindness games folder, 12 apps.
So I organized so I only have 2 pages of icons. My first page is the main page with some of the most used apps, so that's why they're separate. but I love folders, and my second page in particular is all folders. Yeah, some of these do have to be cleaned out. Some of these, I don't think Storm 8 even supports any of their games anymore. There was a time where they were very popular, very accessible games. There was probably at least a dozen of them that they used to, produce. But I think the last time I just took a gander, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. And it was basically every game I tried to open up told me that the developer hasn't updated the app in, 60 million years. So, I was asked if I wanted to delete the app off my phone. But, some of the other folders, like my television folder and my travel folder, have some very useful apps that I still use quite a bit. So my point here is that if you are an app collector, you might want to consider using folders as a way to organize your home screen. Yeah, you can use Siri. I know somebody will come around and tell me, oh, all I got to do is tell Siri to open up the blah, blah, blah app. And I get it. But you know what? There are going to be times where Miss or Mr. Siri are not going to work for you. And so just the reality, in my humble opinion, is as a user, you should have some control and knowledge over where your stuff is on your phone or your computer. And relying on a virtual assistant, to me, is not always the most optimal way to have, to kind of maintain your devices, in my opinion. Again, some people, can take my opinion for what it's worth. But I just think that if you get on top of stuff and you organize stuff yourself, you will have a much better time keeping track of what you download. Now, also, the last thing before I will open the floor up here is sure you all know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you download an app, whether it's free or paid, it belongs to you forever and ever and ever. So even if you've accidentally or deliberately deleted an app and decide 6 months from now, a year from now, that you want that app back, you won't have to repurchase it again if it's a paid app. As long as you have purchased it in the past, you own it. Which, for me, as someone who trains people on all kinds of different apps, it's not a great thing all the time, because then you find that your history of all your purchases is apps that you used once for a client 5 years ago and never going to use again, but they belong to me forever and ever. So, there is pros and cons to that, but the good thing, as far as I'm concerned, is people who accidentally delete apps, or maybe they get deleted when they have to redo their phone. They don't have to go and rebuy everything again. They can just re-download onto their respective device, whether it's an iPhone or an iPad. All right, so
June 6th, 2:04 p.
With that said, let's open the floor up to any comments, questions. Again, let me just stress, I'm not looking for people to start rattling off all their third-party apps. But if you want to bring something to our attention, if you really truly found something that you feel is really neat and maybe under the radar as far as the knowledge goes, then sure, mention it. But I don't want to turn this into another one of these sessions where everybody's just going to, opinionate, have their opinion of what their favorite apps are, because everybody's going to have an opinion. All right, so I open the floor. And be my guest to jump in here.
I was going to point out that, you were talking about the discovery apps and stuff. Now, you do know that Max did merge all that into one.
Yes,
now, right?
I haven't looked at Max. Is it accessible?
Oh, yeah. It's beautiful, because they got tabs at the bottom, and you go into like TLC and what is it called? Discovery.
So all the individual channels have their own tabs?
Right. And then you go into them, and then they have their individual shows. I mean, it's lovely. I mean, I
got to check that out.
I went as far as paying for a whole year, because you got 40% off anyway. So it's nice. So it's very accessible, and you can even have your own profiles and stuff like that. So it's nice. It's very
Cool.
very well laid out for a VoiceOver user.
I'm curious, do you have a favorite GPS app, or don't you necessarily use one? Is there a
I use
favorite one you
Maps,
found?
the Apple Maps app, as far as like most of the time. It does have the pedestrian stuff. They keep adding more and more to the map. I was going to go through the Maps app too, but I felt that by doing so, I might be opening up a can of worms. Because I've noticed on some of the blindness lists that when you start talking about GPS, it literally turns into a religious war as to who's got their favorite apps.
That's for
But
sure. It's a
to
good
me,
way
what
to
I say to
describe it.
people is if it gets you from point A to point B safely and you're happy with the app, then, more power to you. I've used Waze in cars with people. Waze is another WAZE. I have two people, my girlfriend and my brother, who use that app quite extensively, and it really is pretty good. But from personal use, the Maps app does everything that I really need to have done. I've tried Good Maps. That's pretty decent. Obviously the good old traditional blind square, in conjunction with Maps or Google Maps is a good, but again, the day is done. It's got to do what you need it to do and what you need it to do comfortably and confidently. And if you like the app and as I said, it gets you from point A to point B in one piece, then that's really what it matters. What does it matter what somebody else who comes along and says, oh, that app stinks and I would use the, whatever app. Okay, that's great. But you keep using your app, I'll keep using mine.
Have you had a lot of people asking about financial apps, as in bank, personal banking apps, pay your bills, etc.?
Yeah, I get a lot of those questions. I can
Are
tell
they
you,
kind of like GPS?
yeah,
know-
and the one thing I try to explain to people is, believe it or not, some of the direct, like the actual, like the Capital One app, the Chase app, Bank of America, TD Bank, Wells Fargo, those apps are pretty darn accessible within their own right. I mean, I take care of my own finances. I do, I use the Capital One app. I use the Chase app. I set up my credit card payments ahead of time. I can see what I owe. I can look at my bank accounts. I can see, what deposits, checks that have been cashed, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, from the perspective of a blind person, again, another example of how the iPhone and iOS has just opened up my world, where I don't have to rely on sighted assistants to take care of my finances. Everything is, I love being on top of everything and keeping track. So, I mean, I know if you're looking for like, of course, I've worked with so many of them over the years, and now that you put me on the spot, I can't think of the names of these apps.
That's all right. I was just wondering if don't worry about not remembering. I was just wondering if people were getting into
and there are my point
wanting
here,
to do it.
Yeah, and my point is there are a lot of apps that if you just
Discover is another good one too.
Yeah, Discover is very good. Yes. But
Yeah,
if you're
I've
looking
also
for
heard
finances
M&P
apps,
is good.
Yeah, there's several of them that are really good. Again, Apple Viz, if you're looking for like a checkbook manager or something like that, do a search on Apple Viz, because there were several that I've found through them that I've recommended to clients I've worked with over the years.
Oh, thank you. I never thought about doing that. I was thinking more of a generic spreadsheet for the
Right.
person.
Yeah, no, there are some really good.
Yeah, that might that might be something. Do people want to pay their bills, as sort of a follow-up, and then I'll leave you alone? Do you find that people want to pay their bills more with the banks, their financial institutions website or app, or do they want to go to Comcast, the
actual
provider
service? Yeah. It's kind of a mixture, and here's the other sort of rub is you still have a percentage of people who don't trust online stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like,
True.
they won't use their phone. Like I just worked with a client recently. Anything financial was off limits. He just felt that it wasn't safe to do any kind of banking on his phone. So he didn't have a single financial app that he would even allow to be existing on his phone because he just didn't think it was safe. And, and I'm not going to criticize anybody for their opinions, it's whatever. You work with the person, and if that's what their hang up is, that's fine, But so it's interesting because I've run the gamut with people, and a lot of times it's based on what they've heard from others. Like they'll have, oh, my brother said that I should just use I should just pay through my Optimum app, my cable bill, and I should just pay through the AT&T or the Verizon app. And then I've had other clients that, just like I believe Cliff is like me, where we use the banking apps themselves. Cliff, if you're still around, you want to just drop your info before we sign off?
Yep, stiritup.com, STURITUP.com. There's a free resources page there that lets you know how to get a hold of me. Email. There's also podcast links. John's YouTube page and information is there. He also has a podcast where I upload these sessions. So if he happens to get old and not send you the link, you can catch it there.
You guys all have a good rest of the day, and I will talk to you later.
Remember, for all Mac, iOS, and any kind of Apple training, visit macfortheblind.com. John Panarese has some free courses and some reasonable paid courses. You won't be disappointed. See you next time.